Down to the very last, the very last. Everybody's coming in kind of slow this morning. All right, we're going to kind of wrap up fingerprints today as far as lessons concerned. And then I'm going to show one video and then I'm going to let you finish up your fingerprint activities. I looked at the Gizmo, I've got 11 people who have submitted their Gizmo, but only 5 of you have done your quiz. Please go back into the Gizmo and do the quiz. It's right up underneath the activity. So make sure you've done that as well as turned in the worksheet. Still letting folks in. All right, so again, we're going to finish up this last lesson on fingerprinting. I will do a unit on Friday on fingerprint. That'll be the last unit test. After that, just keeping in mind I have to have grades in for seniors. So Friday will be the last unit test, and then we'll have activities after that for the next unit, but it won't be a unit test, okay? There'll be a final activity, but not a final exam. All right, I think all who plan on being on top of. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the video. And then I want to talk to you about your fingerprints. I had 2 sets that were really nice. I want to talk about those. So give a good watch to this one if you haven't already tried to do yours. It is possible. I get this thing to go. Something's always in the way. Please.
Lesson 3, and we have talked about the different types of fingerprints. We have talked about minutia patterns. We have talked about how investigators use prints to their advantage when working a crime scene. And today we're going to talk about how to make prints visible, or how crime scene investigators make a crime scene. So just to recap, fingerprint analysts are tasked with a difficult job. They have to physically analyze prints, and they have to find minutia patterns that are in common between suspect prints and evidence prints found at a crime scene. You might have come to this class thinking that it was really easy to work a crime scene and collect fingerprints, and then it's even easier if you have a suspect to compare those prints. But hopefully throughout the lessons and the activities that we've been doing and the case studies we've been looking at, you know that it's quite a challenging job for these fingerprint analysts. They do look for points of comparison in common, and we call these points of comparison minutia patterns. These are specific patterns that fingerprint analysts look for when they're doing these comparisons. We also learned in the last lesson that there's not a set number of minutia patterns that have to be in common before a match is declared, but usually 8 to 16 are declared before a match is confirmed. And then these fingerprint analysts will be asked to testify to the percent of confidence they have in their comparison and in their match declaration when they do get to court. If you were with us in the last lesson, I asked you to research the Brandon Mayfield case. And you were supposed to watch PBS's Frontline the real CSI. And I hope you found that interesting. That whole program is really interesting in understanding how forensic investigators really work. It is not like we see on CSI. We learned that. And then specifically, that Brandon Mayfield case has called into question the use of fingerprint identification within forensics. And so maybe it called you to question that as well. All right, so for today's lesson, you need to know that there are 3 types of crime scene prints. Now, don't get this confused with the 3 patterns. So the 3 patterns of fingerprints are loops, swirls, and arches. But if we're working a crime scene, there are 3 types of fingerprints that we could find at a crime scene. So the first is visible prints. These prints are made by fingers that touch a surface, and then the ridges have been in contact with some sort of colored or visible material, like blood or dirt or paint, ink, makeup. I know a lot of times I get makeup on my fingertips, and if I touch a white sheet of paper or a white wall, I'll leave fingerprints behind because my makeup mixes with the oils on my ridge patterns. So visible prints are prints that are seen by investigators when they are scanning the crime scene. You can also have plastic prints, and that is synonymous with what some investigators call impression prints. So plastic and impression prints are prints that are 3-dimensional. They are ridge impressions that are left in pliable material or a soft material like putty or wax, soap, dust, and these are also visible prints for the most part. And then you have what's called latent prints, and latent prints are invisible prints that are left behind by clear oils on the fingertips. If you look around you, I'm not sure where you are right now, but if you look around you, it is very likely that there are hundreds of fingerprints all around you on desks or books or walls. And if you can't see them, then that means they are latent prints. Now, if you're looking around and you see a fingerprint on a desk, then that would be a visible print. But more than likely, the fingerprints that are around you are latent or not visible to the naked eye. So investigators, when they are locating visible or plastic prints at a crime scene, they normally don't have a problem finding these prints because they are visible. However, latent prints are a little more difficult because they're invisible prints and they have to be made visible by investigators. Now, this has been helpful in the past few years because there have been many advances in fingerprint technology that have made it a little easier for investigators to find these latent prints. So there are a plethora of tools and powders and chemicals that are used by investigators. And one of those new technologies is an ultraviolet image converter. And it helps to detect latent fingerprints by using ultraviolet images. So this device is called the RUVIS, and that stands for Reflected Ultraviolet Imaging System. But the RUVIS can locate prints on most non-absorbent surfaces without using chemicals or powders like investigators traditionally used. So you can see here the RUVIS is like a cross between a microscope, camera, and you can see from the image on the right, it produces an ultraviolet capture of the fingerprint. And so this is a newer technology that's being used, and it helps investigators because they're not having to breathe in all those powders and chemicals. It's a lot safer and a lot more effective. Now, fingerprints can also be made visible with powders. This is like the more traditional method of making prints visible. So these fingerprint powders, they come in a plethora of different colors and styles and compositions. They can be applied using different brushes and wands, but experienced examiners find that gray and black powders are most adequate for producing those nice, crisp, latent fingerprints. Now, of course, if you're dusting on a darker surface, you would not want to use a black powder. There are neon powders, there are white powders. So investigators have sort of an arsenal of different chemicals and powders and technologies at their disposal when they're working a crime scene. So when using powders, investigators have to be extra careful not to destroy the print because they're physically dusting the powder over the fingerprint. So there's definitely a technique to this. It is an art. If you have ever tried to dust for a fingerprint, you know that it is not as easy as it looks. It's actually really difficult to, one, find a print, two, dust for the print, three, lift the print so that you capture all the minutia patterns. So definitely is an art form. In addition to powders, chemicals are used to collect or make prints visible. One example is iodine fuming. Another is a chemical called ninhydrin. It's often used. Ninhydrin is a chemical powder that reacts with amino acids that are present in fingerprint residue. And that powder is oftentimes converted to a liquid so that it can be sprayed. But ninhydrin is a chemical that uses chemical reactions to make prints visible. Another example of that would be superglue fuming. So the main ingredient in superglue is a chemical called cyanoacrylate. And cyanoacrylate also attracts to the amino acids. Additionally, it attracts to the fatty acids and the proteins in a fingerprint. And because of this reaction, it produces a nice fingerprint for a lot of investigators if the conditions are right. So a lot of different ways to collect prints, a lot of different ways to make prints visible at a crime scene if they are latent prints. Now, once fingerprints are identified and collected, they're run against a digital program and stored in a digital program called AFIS, which is short for the Automated Fingerprint Identification System. Now, at the current time, AFIS contains about 50 million fingerprint records, which is a lot of fingerprint records. But this computer system has the ability to scan and then digitally encode fingerprints so that they can be subject to high-speed computer processing. So a lot of these minutia patterns can be detected using computer software. And the way it works is a fingerprint's converted into like a digital minutia, and then an algorithm sort of reads the fingerprint and identifies matches between minutia patterns found in one fingerprint and another. And so we can see in this example, you can see at the bottom, these two fingerprints, there were 24 minutia patterns in common. And so this, the algorithm of the computer program has a matching score of 100%. So this computer program identifies both of these prints as originating from the same person. Excuse me, it's hard to get my words out. All right, so that ends our fingerprint lesson, and we are done for the day. I will see you in the next lesson.
All righty. So a lot of what she talked about in this was what you all did in your lab. Again, most of you, let's see, let me come over here. I didn't leave it where I thought I left it. All right, there is a quiz. That's where I didn't want to be. All right, so I got a couple of people. So right up underneath the lab, you need to go back and do the quiz. Okay, only, like I said, a lot of people have turned in worksheets and not a lot of you have done the quiz. Quiz is part of the grade, so make sure if you have turned in a worksheet, go back and do the quiz, please. All right, so she talked about the 3 different kinds, and when you did the lab, they talked about classifying prints. Can I switch up? It won't let me do that. All right, but part of the lab talked about identifying latent prints, plastic prints, and matching those up with your suspects. You practice using the powder on your sample and shining the light on the latent prints. So you had a little practice with all the stuff that she was talking about as you did this lab. Okay, now I also want to say when you do these labs, they're not just something to do. You should go back and read them over. So you send me answers, but you don't always go back and read what you wrote. So please do that. Alrighty. Module. Just want to touch on the module today. Seniors going to the dinner today. I hope you enjoy your dinner. Okay, Sue. She also mentioned, all right, so go back and if you've already turned in your worksheet and you feel like you have nothing to do, go back and read this page. In particular, fingerprint analysis. So know all these acronyms, ACEV, know what that is, analysis, comparison, evaluation, and verification. So go back and read that. She talked about minutiaes and showed you all of those. And I really wanted you to try to identify some of those kinds of things when you do yours. All right, she also talked about the automated fingerprint identification system. So please read up a little more on that. And then that is the last lesson in the unit, and then the wrap up. Okay, so the video is in your playlist. So you can go back, and especially those of you who just came in a little bit late, she did a good review at the beginning. So please, if you're finished, work on this. Wednesday, we'll do a wrap-up activity as well. And then Friday, we will test the unit. Okay. And those of you who came in late, you didn't hear that. Friday, we will test this unit. We will be finished with fingerprints. Let me go back to um, sometimes it's just easier to go through the module. Okay. All right. When you do your assignment, please label your fingerprints with what type of prints you have. And what type means, do you have plain arch, tinted arch, whorls, or arches? So you want to make sure that you identify that. You also want to try to just highlight, just do a little highlighter or circle where that you know where the deltas are, if you can locate your delta and your core. So make sure that you are answering this question and not just sending me a page with fingerprints on it. Okay. Um, Hill, do you mind if I show yours? You did a good job. Okay, give me 1 second to pull that up. And I'll show you an example of one that's already done. And again, you just want to get a real good shaving with a pencil so that you can uh, do your fingerprints. And then you want to take a tape. And then the tape will kind of save your fingerprint for you. And then tape it to the page. Okay. It'll be up in a minute. And I wanted to show his because he did two things he did. One, he had to create his own paper. Some of you don't have printers, so it is possible to do this activity without a printer. I don't know if can I rotate this? Yes, I can. There we go. All right. Okay, so he created his own paper template. He did all his fingerprints. I could tell that he taped them down. And he labeled each one, and he labeled on the side, he wrote down what type of fingerprints he has. Okay. So No excuses, folks. I couldn't print, I couldn't this. What you do is you do it on paper, and then you take a snapshot of it and upload your picture from your phone or however you take pictures. Okay. Hold it up to your Chromebook and take a picture. All right. So that's what I need you to do with that. The only thing he didn't do that I really would have liked was to highlight like the core here in the middle, because that's your index finger. That's a good, really clear one. And this little pinky one is, look at how he has all these nice little whorls in there. So that was nice and clear. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna stop talking, let you finish doing what you got to do. Um, again, finish your gizmo first. Take the quiz. And then read the Canvas units to wrap up this unit. Right, Hill, I just sent you a message. All right, and if you have any questions, and again, we are the 15th is the last day to turn in any late work. No late work will be accepted after the 15th. So if you have any zeros that you want to see disappear, you need to let me know if I need to open the if I need to reopen the lesson so that you can have access to it. Okie dokie. Where am I? All right. Okay. All right. Good morning. If you just came in, we're finishing up. You missed the video that we saw on fingerprinting. Finish up your gizmo. The video we watched this morning is in the playlist. We are testing the unit on Friday. So after you've turned in your gizmo and do the quiz, look at the wrap-up units in Canvas. What am I doing? Right, and again, all late assignments are due by the 15th. Nothing is accepted after the 15th. Having it done before the 15th would be nice. And I have to say again that this is a really fantastic class. Most of you stay on top of everything and almost everybody's passing. This is a wonderful class for getting stuff turned in and keeping your grades up. Proud of y'all. And that's saying something considering that's like the first class of the day and sometimes you're half asleep, but y'all are on it. Again, if you need me to open any thing that is closed so that you can get that assignment turned in, please let me know. And again, I think this is the only class I don't have to call nobody's mama. And I appreciate that. You're welcome. And again, if you don't have a printer, please make your own template and do the activity on paper, and then do a snapshot with your phone and upload your picture to the folder. Make sure you've labeled it before you take the picture. Okay, I see a lot of idle people and a lot of people who are logged in who are showing offline. So I hope you're doing your work. Correction, May 13th, all seniors. Everything is due by the 13th. All missing work due by the 13th. not the 15th. And being as most of you all are seniors, please make sure any missing assignments are turned in by next Wednesday. Technically, we should have done a final exam today, but I wanted to just finish the units. Looks like you only would have the one fourth period exam on Friday, so it should not conflict too much with the exam schedule for seniors. So Friday, we'll finish the unit and that will be the last exam. All right, I take that back. There's a couple of people I do need to make a phone call about. You know who you are. Try to beat me to the punch and get those assignments in.
Miss Harris,
Yes.
can you check the chat?
Uh, yes, you can. Okay. Let's look at. How convenient. Some of you need to check your chat. I sent you a message. Please let me know how I can help. Today is Tuesday, so I'm available for during the tutoring time at 1:30. Just drop in. All right, don't forget the quiz at the end of the unit, at the end of the gizmo. Don, check your message, please. Okay. Oh, I still only have 6 people who have done their quiz, but I got a lot of people who have turned in their worksheets. That's 5 points you're giving away. All right, Abigail, I sent you a message. Please check your chat. All right, we only have a few more minutes left to class. Again, if I sent you a message, please acknowledge it. Make sure you take the quiz at the end of the gizmo. If you're finished with everything else, your fingerprints and all that, please make sure that you review the last two lessons in the fingerprint unit. We will test the unit on Friday. Okay, so tomorrow is a review session and a get everything done session and test on Friday. Okay, that is the last test. The next unit is ballistics, I believe, and we'll do some activities in there, but they'll be short so that I don't stress all y'all out because all y'all are seniors. So I gotta have everything done by Wednesday. Alrighty. That being said, happy Cinco de Mayo. It's also Taco Tuesday. Have a great day.